Evening. Wow, nice big crowd. Before we get going, can everybody just turn off their phones, please? Oh, wait, I gotta. That would be really bad. No, Mom, I can't talk right now. No, I really can't. Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight. Welcome to our 12th annual Creative Future Writers Award Showcase. We're here tonight to celebrate 15 talented and diverse writers who I'm sure you'll hear a lot more from in the future. This event is the culmination of a year-long project, which could only have happened with the support of many people, and unfortunately I don't have time to name them all. But I would like to thank our funders, the Arts Council of England and the Amazon Literary Partnership, and our many, many generous prize givers. I'd also like to thank our judges, Nancy Campbell, Kieran Yates, Beth Brambling from Faber Academy, Jack Hadley from Curtis Brown Creative, and Aki Schultz from the Literary Consultancy. It's also an honor to once again hold this event as part of the London Literature Festival here in the beautiful South Bank Centre. Finally, and not at all least, I'd like to thank all 1,600 entrants to this year's competition. Having read every entry, I can say how much we loved reading your work and how difficult it was to choose the writers you'll hear tonight. Creative Future and the Writers Award were established because the literary world can feel at times the preserve of the privileged, and getting a foot in the door can feel harder than ever. Despite that, we're very proud that a third of our past writers have gone on to publish books, and I think you will be seeing a lot more of those in the future. We're in a time where the idea of an open and equal society for all is no longer held by everyone, and fear and division has created a war against empathy. Empathy for anyone who is in one way or another different from obsolete notions of what it means to be normal or what it means to be English. And these voices are creeping further and further into the mainstream and even into our rule of law, to the point where I could be arrested for telling you tonight that I support an organization that rhymes with alkaline fraction. But the strongest weapon for empathy is to see through other people's eyes and to walk in their shoes, and literature is perhaps the strongest medium to do that, to directly humanize those who are being dehumanized, to give voice to those whose voices are being drowned out. So clearly our work in this small way and this event and these writers are more important than ever. We're constantly working to create opportunities for people who may feel restricted by their life circumstances, and these awards are just one part of that work to showcase talent and provide a platform for those voices. Thank you for coming out tonight to support them. Unfortunately, one of our judges, Kieran Yates, couldn't be with us tonight, so I'd like now to hand over to our host and judge, Nancy Campbell, who will introduce some of our winners, alongside myself and Creative Future's CEO, Rose Kiguana. Nancy Campbell is a poet whose delight in the radical potential of the book form has led to many innovative projects with small publishers and collaborations with book artists. Her first collection, Disco Bay, written during a research residency on the climate crisis at Upernavik Museum in Greenland in 2010, led Caroline Duffy to describe her work as deft, dangerous, and dazzling. Nancy's decade-long hybrid creative response to the Earth's glacial regions was awarded the Royal Geographical Society Ness Award for Environmental Writing in 2020. As Canal Laureate, Nancy's texts were installed along the UK's waterways, where they could be seen projected on wharves at night and stenciled on towpaths. They're collected in the pamphlet Navigations. Her latest work considers queerness in the body, both in the prose poems of Uneasy Pieces and the journal form of Thunderstone, a memoir of health and housing precarity, which won the 2023 TLS Ackerley Prize for Biography. Nancy has held numerous international research residencies, most recently as visiting professor of literature at the Free University of Berlin. Please welcome Nancy Campbell.
Thank you, Matt. I'm very pleased to be here. This summer, I sat in my caravan by the railway line to the Midlands, and I was transported to diverse locations and domains of experience, reading submissions for the Creative Futures Writers Award, new fiction, non-fiction, and poetry. I found compelling new voices, forging work that was vital, transformative, and hopeful. Experience was reminiscent of my first reading of Donna Haraway's work, a writer who has been a real touchstone for me in understanding wildness and writing. I just want to share a few lines from Donna Haraway with you before we begin. Haraway writes, "We live in disturbing times, mixed up times, troubling and turbid times. The task is to become capable with each other in all our bumptious kinds of response. The task is to make kin in lines of inventive connection as a practice of learning to live and die well with each other in a thick present. Our task is to make trouble, to stir up potent response to devastating events, as well as to settle troubled waters and rebuild quiet places." First reader this evening is Zara Nesbitt Ahmed. Zara Nesbitt Ahmed is a research and evaluation specialist focused on gender equality and inclusion. Her essays have been published in Critical Muslim and 3 of Cups Press, and her writing has been featured in New African Magazine, African Arguments, The Republic, and Salamta Magazine. For over a decade, she curated Bookshy, a blog dedicated to African literature. She also edited the first 2 issues of the literary magazine Rewrite Reads. In 2024, her work was shortlisted for the inaugural Fern Academy Prize for Essays.
Good evening, everyone, and I hope you can hear me. So I'll be reading from my piece called Aminat. Aminat was my braider. I didn't want to think about my hair while moving through the city, gathering data, setting up interviews, especially not in the rainy season. Heavy downpours often made many streets impenetrable, and the flooding, layered on top of Lagos's infamous go-slow, made any journey unpredictable. The research would be tricky enough. I would be damned if I added my hair to that chaos. She was a few years older than me then, maybe 24 to my 21. Slight, with faint tribal marks on both cheeks and amber brown eyes that often revealed her excitement or frustration before her words did. She had just finished her first year at Yaba College of Technology, a polytechnic in Lagos, popularly known as Yaba Tech, studying for an HND in business administration. To earn extra money, she offered home braiding services. We had first met 6 years earlier at a salon in the quiet residential neighborhood of Ikeja GRA. She was an apprentice. If our visits overlapped and she wasn't too busy, we gisted in a corner while my mother washed, steamed, and styled her hair. We talked about celebrity crushes and the latest Nollywood films. Before I left the country for university, we exchanged emails, but soon lost touch. Years later, she messaged with her number to say she had gone freelance and to call whenever I was back. I did. From then on, we established a routine. Return to Lagos, reach out, arrange a time for her to come to the house, get my hair braided. We usually set up outside near the front door, in a shaded spot that kept us cool. But the rain roared that day, so we moved inside, near the living room window, close enough to feel the breeze, far enough in to stay dry. I brought drinks. Water from the dispenser for me, a chilled bottle of Fanta orange with a straw for her. I set them on a tray on a side table next to her, pulled a dining chair over, adding a rust orange cushion for extra padding. Aminat stood behind me. She opened the packets of 1B hair extensions.
Good evening, and welcome to the Royal Festival Hall. Doors to the auditorium are now open. Doors to the auditorium are now open. Please take your seats.
That's okay. Aminat stood behind me, opening the packets of 1B hair extensions. She stretched the strands, pulling them carefully so the ends would taper rather than be blunt once braided. When she finished, she took a small wooden 3-pronged comb, sectioned my already blow-dried hair, and began. I passed her the first strand for my mid-sized waist-length strengths. The rhythm settled in. Her parting my hair, me pulling apart a section of the extensions, lifting my hand and passing it to her behind me, the strands running through my fingers as she took it from me and wrapped it around my hair, keeping the twist firm but not pulling too tightly on my scalp as her fingers and the extensions made their way down to my waist. And we talked, as we always did, about our latest celebrity crushes, her studies, and what I planned while I was home. Thank you.
William Wilde is a poet and artist from London. They are a Poetry Archive Now winner, were highly commended in the Bridport Prize, and have performed widely, including at the Queen Elizabeth Hall, alongside the London Philharmonic Orchestra. William's poetry has appeared in Propel, Basket, Lighthouse, Queer Life, Queer Love 2, and elsewhere, and their paintings have been exhibited at the Royal Academy Summer Show and Discerning Eye. William's scenery and costumes have appeared in film, museum, and theatre installations across the UK.
Hi. Does anyone here have a garden shed? A few of you. For those that don't, you're missing out. If I was a shed salesperson, this poem would be my pitch. This is called Sheds. She caught him trying to bury the china plate he had broken in the flower bed, the one with the picture of Charles and Diana. He leant on the spade and looked at her sadly. "Never mind," she said, "we'll buy some glue." And scooping up the pieces, stored them in a corner of the shed with the worn-out shoes, waiting to have its shattered edges cleaned and joined again. I unwrapped this package years later and made up this story about my parents. I made up the plate as well when I found it near the apples. We always had too many apples. From a broad tree that stopped the light reaching the kitchen, they were huge, bitter, not for eating, and full of wasps. She wrapped each one in paper, like the plate, and stored them in the shed in boxes where they slowly dried, taking on the smell of the mower's petrol, which always reminds me of the time my father burnt his forehead off using it to light the bonfire. We came home, and he appeared from the darkness of the shed's doorway, his face red and gleaming, like an apple. There was always an apple. The only other time I saw him make a face like that was when my mother left, around the time the woodwork petered out, which was a long time before or after. In the shed there was a table he had made from an old panelled door, and bolted to it an iron vice, in which he clamped the rough timber he cut for the bird tables that stood at mad angles in the flower beds like burnt-out trees. Rudimentary platforms, piled with mouldy crusts the squirrels took, back up the trees in tiny mouths, back up the trees that dropped their leaves in dark piles on the roof of the shed, keeping it damp inside, rusting the saws and chisels and the mower's blades, rusting the nails and the screws in the jars so they fused together into useless lumps of dark red dust. In the end it rotted. They took it away, replaced it with another shed, bigger, but the same. All the junk came out, was saved, and all went straight back in. We hung the blunt tools up, slightly further apart than before.
Hello, I'm Rose. Our next reader is Emma Alati. Emma writes literary and book club novels and short stories. She also writes psychological suspense under the pen name Ali J. Dunn. She's been published in the People Tree Press Olaweo Now anthology and longlisted for the Harville Secker Bloody Scotland Crime Writing Award. She was runner-up for her novel Grudge. She was longlisted for the S.I. Leeds Prize 2012 for her novel The March of Ada.
Good evening. Wild fruit. Calvin Macpherson crossed Westbourne Grove, tugging at his coat collar, although he knew it'd make little difference to the icy February wind. He was walking to the house in Hampstead, and if he walked smartly, he would arrive at about 8 p.m. Then, after the sitting, he would have the bus fare back home to Westbourne Grove and rent for the room he shared with Johnny. It was a month since he had walked out of the mechanic's shop in Shepherd's Bush. Though there are plenty of jobs, hadn't England put out the call in 1961 for labour shortage? He was picky now, more careful. Lucky for that foreman, he had thrown down the wrench because he had been itching to lift it and conk that wretch's thick head. And what good would it have served him to be locked up? The jokes, the miscalling him Sam, the messing with his wages, the way that man thought up little ways to get under his skin. When all Calvin wanted to do was finish his 8 hours and earn his money, so then what he called his real life could begin. A wash and brush up to slough off the grease and dust, a bite to eat, and then straight to the All Jazz Club or the Blues Bar, either one pulsating with calypso and smelling of rum and perfumed women. Since Calvin had come to England, he had discovered 3 important things. That the name for men like him was a pleasant one, ladies' man. Back home it was horn dog, and he decided he liked the England name better. The second thing was the average white man was filled with racist hate, some of them enraged just from seeing him and Johnny walking in the street. But the biggest secret that the British Empire had been keeping from him, and somehow it was linked to the second, was that there was a whole heap of white women just waiting for Indians, Africans, and West Indians to come so they could welcome them. Late last night, Calvin had stumbled in, waking Johnny up, telling his adventures. After a while, Johnny said, look, he didn't want to get all tangled up with them. Look at the picnic, he declared, one less looking, with knotted dry hair, just lost around black people. Johnny added that he preferred women who could meet him barb for barb, who smelt of slow-cooked food, sorrel, and Auntie Millicent's hair grease. Forget about white women. Go get yourself a good West Indian woman who knows how to keep house and fry chicken and build something together. Why I come thousands of miles just to have what is back home in St. Lucia? Calvin retorted, shrugging off his shirt. You messing with fire, you hear? Johnny said, and rolled over, closing his eyes. Thank you.
Matt Taylor is an award-winning creative non-fiction writer represented by Alice Lutchins at Curtis Brown. Winner of a Writing Chance 24-25, Substack Strand, long-listed for Fish Publishing Short Memoir Competition 2024, highly commended at Life Writing Prize 2021, winner of Spread the Word Scribe UK 2021. Matt also writes the Substack newsletter Underclass Hero. Matt invites readers into the raw, vibrant landscape of his life, navigating the care system, wrestling with class prejudice, and living in recording studios with cool bands. Every instalment, he peels back the layers of identity and social injustice, crafting stories that linger long after the final sentence, reminding us all of the power of resilience and the human spirit.
Sounds way more grand than I am. Anyway, this is an extract from my piece, I Screamed in Lowercase. Photography is about light. Having no photos plunged my childhood into a dark age. As much as the BBC journalist frustrated me with his lack of empathy towards my situation, he ignited something in me that hadn't been there before. I didn't know why, but having some photos from my childhood suddenly felt necessary. I wasn't lying to the journalist when I told him photos weren't really a thing in children's homes, because they weren't. I was sure no photos existed from that time. It had been over 10 years since I left. To prove myself wrong, I would go on long walks to forage the deepest, darkest, densest, most overgrown parts of my memory, desperately searching. Each search led me to a void, a wall of infinite blackness so profound, sometimes I doubted whether I would ever find a way back. Little sparks occasionally flashed, memories of photos being taken. Grainy A4 printouts of pictures taken from a care worker's phone when they took me and my brother to Blackpool for a weekend as part of transitioning to a new children's home. They were pinned up in the kitchen. Some photos did exist. People didn't really know how to store photos back then. That trip was in April 2007, before the iPhone, before the iCloud, or anything that allows us to keep photos we forget about. But this was a starting point. On further walks, I wrestled, wondering whether I wanted to pursue this. Was it worth it? Was I ready? What am I even doing this for? I walked away from that life for a reason. Sentimentality was never something I had learned. It's hard to grow attachment to things that... It's hard to grow attachment to things when anything you were attached to would disappear at some point. Without realising it, I'd embodied Dory's mantra of just keep swimming. Getting any photos would take me to a place I wasn't sure I wanted to go again. It wouldn't be as simple as firing up an old hard drive or dusting off an old box. I would have to contact people and services. I obtained my care files from social services. Out of the 15,000 PDFs, out of the tons of images of handwritten notes, not a single photograph. More memories flashed by. Celebration evenings. I firmly remember being shown photos by a staff member on their email after one. They looked professional. Someone must still have them. Luckily, I was in contact with that staff member. I got in touch. She couldn't help and told me of a policy that came in shortly after she left. I screamed in lowercase, thanks for the help. I got in touch with the care provider, still nothing. I lost my place. Sorry. I got in touch with social services and asked them to look again to see if they could find any. Still nothing. I screamed in lowercase, thanks for the help. I got in touch with a care provider. Still nothing. I pushed back on what their policies were on this, and I said I had firm memories of photos being taken. All they replied was 2 months after I left, a policy came in giving each house a camera and all the photos would be archived. I screamed in lowercase, thanks for the help. It's not that simple. That's what I told the journalist. So why, years after the feature had been published, am I still pursuing this? Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. This wasn't around a mastermind I'd started, so I finished. Sometimes my brain obsesses. Things I resist tend to persist. Maybe I was just fed up of not being able to join in when people shared the parts they cared about from their childhood. The original spark. The memory of the Blackpool photos in the kitchen. That care worker was into sharing things, saving things. We used to share MP3s with each other. Could it be possible that he might still have copies of those photos? I tried to contact him before, but he'd always ignored me. I get it. People move on with their lives, but this was one last shot in the dark. My fingers let out an exhausted sigh after tapping out another cold calling email, desperately hoping this one would get back. Nothing. Weeks of empty plastic bags tumbled past, and then an email landed in my inbox. These were the photos. My brain puked verbally incoherent remarks while my fingers trembled over the trackpad. Now I had them. Did I actually want to see them? Some things can't be unseen. Those photos would take me back to a place I wasn't sure I was ready to go. I closed the email. Maybe the reason I didn't want any childhood photos is because I didn't want to understand what my childhood meant. But I would have to confront this eventually. I reopened the email. I screamed in lowercase, "Thanks for the help." Thank you.
Nathan Stewart is from the Cotswolds, currently studying English and creative writing at the University of Exeter, where he is a fiction editor for the university's literary journal and the editor-in-chief of the Arts and Culture magazine. He has been shortlisted in the H.G. Wells Short Story Competition, the Young Walter Scott Fiction Prize, and commended twice in the Writers of the Future contest. He's also won first place for the In Focus Short Story Competition, as well as performing his poems in local Exeter events. Please welcome Nathan.
Right. My poem is split into 3 different sections, so I will be reading the subtitles for those sections, don't worry. And it is called The 3 Ways I Have Witnessed Creation. The first section is called Touch. It was hot, and the fish looked like a silver slug, clasped and squeezed between my grandfather's fingers. It flinched, and beat its head like a schizophrenic against the wrinkles and ruts of the old man's palm. The stained club was a ludicrous rolling pin in my hands. Hit it, and I hesitated. Aim for its head, and I hesitated. Right between his eyes, and I felt like the sun was clubbing my own pate, drawing sweat from the waters. Do it now. My pubescent triceps clenched and brought that stick thrashing downward, but I missed and struck his knuckles, and he winced and did not let go again, and I struck the fleshy plateau between the black unblinking beads over and over until it stopped its flogging, and its pulpy skull was laid bare for all the judgment of heaven and earth. And my grandfather was pleased, and slit its stomach and emptied its guts, and patted me on my sweaty head with bloody fingers, and told me to cast it out again. Sight. I walked the same paths and felt green fire blush against the cobwebbed corner of my eye, and sweet blossom bullets hissed past my ear, and I heard the swish of twig and stem under my naked foot. It hurt like hell, but I was happy, and the noises throbbed like starlings, drawing heavy crystal beaks into the well of my eardrum, disturbing the waters and prying open the lazy lid within my soul, and I could see, not simply the haze of smudges, but the patterns of all winged silhouettes that pirouetted and brushed plumage of lilac, teal, and apricot. The air tasted solid, with petals and pheromones, and I became color, a roaring palette of my own creation, part and parcel with the past tableau. That was when they found me, and guided my elbows with gloved fingers back to the blank and empty walls of ecstasy. It was not their fault. They did not know that I could see. Taste. Clouds scud behind the needle of the spire, carving the firmament into gossamer patches. Lazy eye lamps spin and stare their nightly circuit as transformers hum and drown the bird song with steel nooses. Horses stamp and chuckle into the breeze which gnaws and plucks the quilted branches. I breathe in and taste the sun on my teeth, flattening the red against cold enamel. Thank you.
Abu Layla is a writer interested in love, violence, and revolution. Their work, Preserving Family Histories of Anti-Colonial Resistance, was shortlisted for the 2024 Wasafiri New Writing Prize and won the 2024 Kassan Kanafani Resistance Art Prize. Their writing on sex and gender today and in the ancient Middle East won the Bridport Prize and the London Writers' Awards. They are an alumnus of Barbican Young Poets, and their poetry has been published in the Bad Betty Press anthology Field Notes on Survival, recreated as a stone carving at the Bloomsbury Festival, and performed in Kolkata, India with the Queer Muslim Project. They are currently working on their first novel.
Hello. I was the youngest of 10 children, so my mother existed to me as a screaming voice. Screaming at the soldiers as they burned down our house, screaming at me to finish eating my tomatoes, screaming at me to turn my head away from the corpses on the streets, which I wanted to see, because I didn't like feeling that I was too young to face death. Other than the screaming, she let me run wild. She had too many children on her hands to pay too much attention. I trotted around the streets, following packs of children, befriending stray dogs, killing snakes, jumping into rivers, dodging the sniper's bullets. Only my mother's voice called me back into a house, onto a mattress on the floor, into quiet. As we moved from house to house, her hollering voice was a comforting constant. The floors changed, the roofs changed, the trinkets left by old inhabitants changed. My siblings came and went from battles and prisons, but her beautiful screams were always there. Nobody ever explained to me why we lived like this, but some things I figured out. For example, I like to play with the street dogs, and I watched the soldiers' eyes following us. I learned that they viewed me, a dirty child with only a scream for a mother, and the dogs as the same things. Both things to be cleaned off the earth so that they could have it for themselves. If I'd had the time while escaping the bullets, I would have loved to make a growling face at them and bare my teeth. I felt I had sharp teeth and would run my tongue over them. We went from abandoned house to abandoned house. By the time we got to the 26th house, I was 16. I liked the house because of the puppy and the sea. The puppy licked my hair clean every night. I assumed she felt I needed it, and she was probably right, as running water was a rarity. She was a black dog with sharp teeth, and she liked to hunt my toes. She did bring me dead birds at times, but she made up for it by guarding my mattress from my siblings, sleeping in my spot, and biting anyone who disturbed her. Even though we had little food, I dropped some for her under the table, which made my mother scream. The sea faced the 26th house, and I swam in it every day for hours. There was no school in the war, so I had time. It was a scary sea, and I feared it might kill me. But I loved the waves hitting my face, loved to hear the thumping noise fusing with the pumping of my heart. I loved opening my mouth and feeling the salt inside it. I swam happy and terrified, thinking of the big-teethed, deep-throat monster that lived in the water. They said her name was Charybdis. She swallowed the sea 3 times a day, with its fish, its fishermen, and its teenage girls. She spat it back out 3 times a day, too. I timed my swimming to be in between her drinking and spitting time. She was better than the terror of the land, the weapons in my siblings' hands, the boys who kept disappearing, the soldiers. Better than the relics of whoever had lived in the 26th house before us, before having to run away. The horrible pictures of their great-aunt, grand-aunt, the red pair of children's shoes. I climbed up the rocks and let the sun dry me as I watched the sea being swallowed and spit out again. I felt the salt on my gums between my teeth. Thank you.
The daughter of immigrants, Stephanie Y. Tam grew up with flight in her bones, inherited it from her father who escaped poverty in Hong Kong, and her mother who fled communist China in the hull of a fisherman's boat. As a radio journalist, she's produced content for Freakonomics Radio, New York Public Radio, and BBC World Service. Her writing has been published in The Believer, The Behavioural Scientist, and Slate, amongst others. She's won the Harper's Bazaar Short Story Competition, placed second in the Masters Review Novel Excerpt Contest, and been nominated, longlisted and shortlisted for other prizes. Before writing and radio, she researched mental health predictors for refugee children as a Daniel M. Sachs Scholar at the University of Oxford. Welcome, Stephanie.
I'm reading from an essay called Radio Silence. In your ear, I am stripped of the face that renders my voice foreign to others. This was what first drew me to radio, a childhood dream of speaking on neutral ground. On the street, Asian tourists hail me for directions, and Caucasian men leer, "Ni hao," though I don't actually speak Mandarin. On the air, disembodied, people no longer ask me, "Where are you really from?" By my 20s, I had shed the tonal lilts of my mother tongue and cultivated a general American cadence. Colleagues complimented my good radio voice. I spoke with the neutral voice, critical to journalism, the reporting I, the objective I. I landed my first break as an intern at a major media institution. "You're too quiet," a senior colleague instructed me. We were sitting in a secluded studio. He was training me to use a shotgun mic, and he flexed the long, sleek shaft confidently, like an appendage of his personality. "You need to be more assertive. Don't be afraid to interrupt the guest. If they don't give you the answer you want, take the mic back." He yanked the microphone away from me. "You know, use your mic to control the conversation. It's like a power stick. Whoever has the mic has the power to speak. Never let the guest take it from you." He leaned close, as though telling me a secret. Then he thrust the rod of the microphone into my face until its foam point brushed against my lips. I froze. His scent a distinctive musk, loud as his laughter. "Don't be afraid to get close. Real up front," he grinned. "You gotta get closer than comfortable to grab the best sound." His breath brushed my face. I flinched, then chided myself. "Don't be so sensitive. He'll think you're a prude. It's nothing." I was the new kid. Whenever he came too close, I couldn't be sure if the problem was him or me. All I knew was that my personal space bubble didn't exist for him, and his use of the microphone like a power stick stripped me of speech. The two related in a way I couldn't yet parse. He was loud and charismatic, his confidence effortless. He threw his ideas into the ring, as though if they were rejected, it would be the world's loss and not his. How unlike my own mother, who labored tirelessly to justify her place in America. How unlike myself, who was constantly trying to vindicate her sacrifices, as though a university degree or a Rhodes Scholarship might make up for her humiliations. I watched my colleague with a mixture of awe and envy, even as an old, familiar fear resurfaced. You will never belong here. Noise is never neutral. Soundscape theorist R. Murray Schafer observed that every society has a noise that stands out above all others, a noise that expresses the power of that age. He refers to this as the sacred noise. In ancient times, that noise came from the wild forces of nature, volcanoes, earthquakes, and storms. Their thunderous voices often worshipped as gods. In medieval Europe, the church wielded this noise with its clanging bells and reverberating organ. During the Industrial Revolution, it was the noise of capitalism. Steam engines, factory whistles, the blast furnaces of productivity. Today, Schafer argues, it has fallen into the hands of the broadcaster, those whose noise blares across our airwaves and into our very homes. The key is this: to have the sacred noise is not merely to make the biggest noise. Rather, it is a matter of having the authority to make it without censure.
Beatrice Feng is an agender, Arawais poet from Changshu, China. Their work has appeared in Wilderness House Literary Review, Writing Disorder, the Wordarium Journal, and other literary journals and magazines. They currently hold a BA in English Literature, Creative Writing and Practice at Lancaster University. They are pursuing MA in Poetry at the University of East Anglia. Besides poetry, they are passionate about art history, language studies, and the history of magic.
Hi everyone. Okay, I will start reading now. My soul. My soul was a clay pot for months, so I grew enough planting it. I checked the ratio of its lit and shaded pinks to know how I was feeling. I studied its making and tested its durability. When it broke, I turned to my Bambi plush and found the stitching of her eyes, my soul, for the following year. Last June, the opera I encountered in Florence Night Street was my soul for the week. This February, the waves in lime ridges, crashing upon the mossy staircase from land to sea, and splashing salt into my mouth, was my soul for an hour. The balm I applied on my parched lips was my soul for the rest of February, since it is the pain of smiling in winter. The cracked egg I had for breakfast was my soul soaked in spiced water all night. A bent tree I met on my walk today was my soul, splitting into stream-thin hollow, inside which I found my soul for the next second, the sun-rimmed reeds. When I returned, my soul, a shower was my soul for 10 minutes, housing my singing in its hot rain. For the next hour, my 3-year-old quilt was my soul, pressing dated bloodstains with dream memories back into my bosom. During my nap, I remembered my mom's lipstick I stole at the age of 18 was my soul for half the night, and I drew rivers across my temple from my soul's coral tip. When I woke up, my soul became crayons and paper, so I turned nostalgia into some pregnant moon who hummingly rocks tides of fish eggs. At the moment, my soul is that oven of sunset my mom was pointing to through the orange-tinted car window over 10 years ago. Thank you, everyone.
Amy Leonard is a writer from Suffolk. She gained her bachelor's in English literature and creative writing from the Open University in 2024. This is the first time her work has been published, and she is currently working on multiple novels simultaneously. Please welcome Amy.
I'm going to read from my piece, A Gentle Nudge. At 13 years old, Cain had 47 cats roaming his hallways and a fox living in his upstairs bathroom. He liked the novelty and strangeness of the fox at first. His mum had spotted a crumpled heap by the side of the road and decided she would nurse it back to health. It lived on tinned dog food served twice daily. After it arrived, it was 2 days before it moved, having lain corpse-like on the tattered linoleum. Once its health improved, it became adept at manoeuvring itself around the space, sneaking out from behind the bath to try and nibble at Cain's toes. The cats were worse. The fox could be hidden from his peers. Cain had been restrained enough not to tell anybody when it first arrived in the cardboard box. His mum, like a delivery driver, bustling her way through the halls, tripping over cats and swearing, hisses in her wake. The cats made themselves known. Their fur became ingrained in his clothing, and he shouldered the othering from his peers daily. He didn't want to be different, but his mum's character preceded him, along with the last name he had got from his father, the only thing he had ever got from him. And now, the cats. Tuesday evening, the same as most evenings, a bus ride home from school with his earbuds in, a layer of protection against the other children. Through the front door to the smell of cat shit, and his mum's form folded over the dirty hob, making a lasagna from scratch, bechamel sauce spitting onto her top as a handful of cats weaved between her legs. It was always best when he first came home. As the evening stretched on, his mum would become more taut, fraying at the edges. "Can you feed the cats?" He took his usual route around the house with a large bag of cheap kibble, and the cats screamed as if he were Jesus feeding the 5,000, their backs arched and their mouths yawning open. Gang violence was rampant within the three-story terraced house. A group of cats attacked a weaker member of a rival faction as he placed an old curry-stained Tupperware container of food down, who moved back behind the banister, knowing that to intervene meant being mauled. Afterwards, he trod downstairs and placed the food in a locked cupboard. His mum had become increasingly dependent on the cats. He stopped in the hallway and watched her covertly for a few moments. The awkwardness of her arms and the hunch of her shoulders. He cleared his throat. Thank you.
So hello again. What a lovely, warm audience you are. We now have a short interval, so please join us back here at 10 minutes past 8 for the second half of the showcase. Thank you, everyone.
welcome back to the second half. I told you that they were terrific, and they're indeed very terrific. Our next winner is Gobscure. Making art as Gobscure, they've toured broken word shows, spiraling out of their lived experience of homelessness, have a permanent text-based mural wall riot at the Museum of Homelessness, and was a finalist in the Arts and Homelessness International Awards. Live Theatre Newcastle recently supported their show You Have Already Survived, and in September, Jason Williamson of Sleaford Mods read their Edge City monologues from the street at Live Theatre. Unfortunately, Gobscure couldn't be with us tonight, but recorded their piece on video.
Gobscure reading Invisibled, Creative Future Writers Award 2025, Gold Award winner, non-fiction. Caraba, just beyond Hadrian's Wall, so we're outside Empire. We're in sunset's after fire, the air turning pink, moon sliver ascending. A fort for 500 warriors stood on this moorland 2,000 years ago. Empire soldiers from North Africa, Iberia, Greece, Palestine, Israel. Water engineers from Basra bridging the Tyne. There's a ruined temple to Mithras where for 150 or so years some engaged in death through to life after. Early Christian hate invisibled that rival cult right out of Empire. This genuine site has fake, i.e. replica altars. The real ones decorate a wee museum in Toon where we ran wild as bear. Offerings on tonight's fake altars include piles of 2p's and 20p's, a single 20 centimes, a broken daffodil, invasive species, coroner beer top. We're on the far side, in the wild lands, beyond Empire, just. Yesterday was new moon. Today is 1% sliver, a tiny hanging nail. The dusk and after chorus is stone chat, lark, crow, curlew, oyster catcher gulls, and 2 geese in lazy chatter. This day-night is accidental magic. In therapy, we've been saying how mostly we live by handholds. Things we grasp to keep our head above water for a gasp of air. Birds returning in the spring. Special moons. Specks off, coffee steam, blurry dream. There's layers above. Only we never had the word for that. Slava Paloonin snowshoe in Glasgow decades past when they'd just made it to the west blew us away. Sitting in their blizzard blew us. Clown Slavas, I will be happy, I must be happy. Yes, the KGB watch, that empire is crunching in my footsteps, but happy I must be. Clowns do lally, especially when pursued. And we were clowning around Scotland at that time. And Leah Bass's advice, if the emperor is only halfway pissed off, they strip you naked, cover you in honey and feathers, and march you off. And Leo continues. But what the emperor doesn't know is we clowns find it easy to be covered in honey and feathers and marched out. We do. We clowns find it easy to be covered in honey and feathers and marched off. Slava was in Sunderland last December. Took friend for birthday. They said, best thing ever. And we booked a table for pub food beforehand. First time ever. Describe all this in therapy, we are told that's joy. Joy.
Born in France, Eve Naden holds an English degree from the University of York. She now resides in the UK, where she works as a project manager for the civil service and teaches English in her spare time. Diagnosed with autism in 2024, she writes to make sense of a world that's increasingly difficult to navigate. Her work has featured in the Roadrunner Review, the Elmbridge Literary Magazine, and in 2021, she won the Zealous Short Story Competition. When she isn't writing, she can be found composing music and knitting scarves nobody asked for.
Hi everyone. I'm going to read a bit from my piece Habitat. Molly's there. She is bathed in the glow of the fridge. Her eyes flash blue. The bulb's blown, she says. Aoife nods. This isn't the first time. They fumble in the dark for knives and forks, bowls and plates. Molly cuts herself. Her blood is silky, and she insists on sucking it from her thumb, no plasters. Aoife watches, bile rising. She says nothing. They sit together, curled up, eating with their hands, their fingers bright and wet with grease. Aoife wipes her hands. Molly sucks jellied meat from her fingernails, globs of fat like yellow nicotine. I need a shower, says Aoife. Don't let me stop you. Molly hasn't finished. She licks the bones. Her mother calls after dinner. Her voice is breathy, desperate. It tastes like soil. The teeth in her mouth turn to pebbles, as they often do when she's pretending not to understand things she already knows. Aoife listens anyway. It's not true, is it? This is her mother's favourite question. What they're saying about you. It's the same question she asked yesterday. Aoife gives the same answer. No, Ma. Oh. Okay. I mean it. It would be all right if you were. I know, Ma. But you're not, she adds quickly. You're not, are you? I told you I'm not. A breath. Oh, thank God. I always knew you weren't. Oh, thank you. Anyway, love, get something to eat. Aoife can only think of the potato and the dusty warehouse floor. Molly didn't come to the exhibition, though Aoife had invited her a week before the invitations went out. Molly shook her head. It made her look older. Her skin wriggled. She said, I can't see you like that. Like what? Molly couldn't answer. She had never seen the photos, but Aoife knew what she meant. She simply wanted to argue. They were good at arguing. The gallery is small, claustrophobic. The lights are low and warm. She stands in an incubator drinking champagne. She doesn't like champagne, but it's free and it sparks inside her chest. The sensation of getting shot without injury. Addictive but uncomfortable in the way many things are. The artist's late. When he arrives, he's already drunk and slurring. Any conversations about his work are abandoned. He spends most of the night in the bathroom. His photos are well received. She thinks they are anyway. Most are covered in red stickers. She walks the exhibition twice, round and around. Each photo is cordoned off, each in a separate enclosure. Most are named: Ulysses, Mrs. Bloom, Apollo's wife. They are all framed, except one. It clings to the wall untitled. 6 red stickers are dotted below it. There will surely be a bidding war, she thinks, although she doesn't know how bidding wars work or if there will truly be one. She doesn't recognise the girl in the photo. It is her, she realises, but she feels estranged from the image, a version of herself she can't quite claim. On all fours, fingers splayed out in front of her, back raised, legs bent, about to pounce. Her mouth hangs open, teeth bared, the red of her throat gaping, about to devour. It's the most beautiful she's ever been. The photo's small but heavy. It breathes against her, a living thing, panting in her arms. Quiet, she tells it. Quiet till we're running through the streets, 2 women hunting in the dark. Thank you.
Godelieve de Bray is a poet and critic based in London, with poems in Propel, Tate and 14 Poems. Her critical work has featured in Poetry London, the London Magazine and LARB. Welcome, Godelieve.
Only 4% of the mammals on planet Earth are wild. I dream creatures. Coyotes swagger by bayous. Mountain goats pedal cliff faces. Baby leatherbacks swing their flippers toward the sea. Whatever unbolted fizz of wilderness thrashes inside me, I resist. My frankest instincts, filament bright. Under this denim, in each epiphany of day, I'm animal. Everything I thought mine appears outside of me. Friends, lovers, books. I dream creatures that buck and shit, entirely undomesticated. Bears snatch salmon from the rapids. A sounder of boars stir dust. Dream the opposite of discipline. Every grief its own respective wail. Dream trumpets, orchestras. The sincere equivalent of a deer's eye caught unexpected on the edge of bush. Twitchy fretting. In any instant, I am feeling exactly what I was made to feel. Like arnica rings a breeze. Like a serval cat ribbons a rat's body. Thank you.
Ellen Rickford lives on a boat in East London, finding inspiration in the churning mass of life, both human and otherwise, that the waterways draw in. She began writing regularly 18 months ago, finding that turning experiences and observations from a sometimes painful world into stories made life feel altogether warmer and more colourful. Her favourite form is short fiction, especially stories that explore the intricate inner lives of flawed and complex characters, revealing the depths of human frailty and resilience. And Ellen can't be here this evening, so Matt is going to read from Letter to Bobby.
When the weather gets warm and it feels like the promise of something I thought I'd never have again, I tilt my face up to meet the sun. And I remember when we'd stand side by side in the gathering dusk and watch the fireflies flicker along the dark edges of the park. And when we'd walk around the square in loops just to be outside in the warm air. I remember when we sat on the bench under the maple trees, watching rats weave their way between the black bags that were piled up by the bins. And when we heard a man shout across the street, "Where have you been?" And a woman shout back, "Vermont, honey." And afterwards, we couldn't stop saying it again and again, trying to do her accent. I remember the first time we properly met. You were wearing a black shirt with a red flower pinned to it. "I'm Bobby," you said. But I already knew that because even though we'd never spoken, I'd heard you say, "My name's Bobby," 20 times at least by then. You walked me home, and I remember I said something about us just being friends. And you looked disappointed, even a little sad, but smiled at me anyway and said, "You know, I could use another friend." And soon we were meeting every day, sitting across from each other, eating cheap soup at the Chinese restaurant down the street from my apartment, or playing video games on the old machines in the upstairs room at the cinema. It felt like a lifetime, but it can only have been July and August, maybe a little bit of June, maybe a little bit of September. I remember the first time you brought it up. We were sitting at the top of the steps outside the library, looking down at the stone arch and the fountains in the square beyond. You said, "There's something I want to tell you, but I'm afraid you'll feel differently about me if I do." And I thought, you must have killed someone. Drink driving, maybe, like the bald guy with the prayer beads who was at all the meetings back then. Or in a bar fight, like John, the old one, not the young one, from Crown Heights. And I wondered why you thought I'd care. Because that was just life in those days, wasn't it? Nights spent sitting on plastic chairs surrounded by drunk drivers and drunk fighters, and surgeons who had botched their work with shaking hands, and mothers who had left their kids for hours in the parking lot or the grocery store or the back of the car and had only noticed when the police came knocking to bring them home. And as they talked, I'd mostly just sit there thinking, shut up, Sherry, your 2 minutes was up ages ago. But you must have seen my face because you said I didn't hurt anyone. So I knew then it must be something else. And again, you'd say, I want to tell you, but I'm afraid you'll feel differently about me. And I would say that I didn't think that I would, but it was up to you. Then one night I knew. I just knew exactly what it was. And I sat up in bed all the way up, and I thought, fuck. Thanks.
So, Laurel Hart is a writer and illustrator born and raised in East Sussex. After completing a degree in English literature and creative writing at the University of East Anglia, she has been working in museums and medieval castles, trying to befriend ravens and telling everyone who will listen about a history of rat poisoning. She's currently working on her debut novel, which draws on her love of nature and all things strange and unexplainable. Welcome, Laurel.
Hi everyone. So history of rat poison. So I'm gonna read from my piece Actias Luna. I am developing an affinity for the animal voices. This morning, upon entering the penguin enclosure, I was greeted by the voice of a proud emperor up upon a rock. He said, "Oh mother, a great mother, feed us, nourish us, bring us what we ask. Mother, we starve. We haven't eaten since last night. Mother, you understand. Mother, fish, fish. Oh, great mother, please." Had I heard him speak like this to me 2 months ago, I would have been frightened, but I'm getting used to it. My husband thinks that I've gone insane. The biggest penguin speaks the loudest. He's beautiful, some kind of patriarch. The others crowd together and murmur amongst themselves. "Mother," they say, "it's our great mother." A bucket of slimy, half-frozen fish is their breakfast. I dangle these into their beaks. The fish are dead, so I cannot hear them speak, but I imagine that they squeal in slivery, high-pitched voices. The penguins thank me in their coltish, gentlemanly way. They have good manners. They respect their mother. My husband is still in the bathtub by the time I come home. I nurture that little seed of hope which tells me one day I'll come home and things will be different. He'll be on the couch or even in the kitchen, cooking dinner and dancing to the radio. One day, I will find my husband filled with life again. Currently, however, my husband is frozen in catatonic terror in the bathroom. In the months after, his phobia of insects had become so intense that he backed himself into a corner one night and never left it, instead moving himself into the immaculate cleanliness of the bathroom. I was granted my newfound abilities. He was given only fear. When I come in, he's drinking from the tap. Water overflows from his jaws, soaking his clothes. "Do you want something to eat?" Yeah, piece of toast, thank you." "How was your day?" "Something was hitting the window, a fly, I think." "Is it still here?" "Gone." Our conversations are usually just as monosyllabic as this one. If he wants a piece of toast, I will bring it to him. I bring him his meals, and he leaves me his dishes. I will never know what he's thinking. Unlike the animals, I can only hear his voice when he speaks. I sleep by the open window and watch the stars through a mosquito net. The bedroom smells like milk and honey. The linens are soft and cool. This house has enough beds for 3 people, but I am the only person who sleeps in one. In the dark, I hear something. It's only a whisper, but it's unmistakable. A voice so familiar, it floods me with tenderness and turns my stomach. I close my eyes. I shut her out. Thank you.
Our final reader tonight is Jasmine Allensbach. Jasmine is an ex-phonic Swiss writer and award-winning physicist living in London. Speaking 7 languages, she writes in English despite her mother tongue being Swiss-German. She is a young trustee of the London Library, where she was formerly an emerging writer, a Barbican young poet, a Tin House scholar, and runs an international writers' workshop. When not dissecting words or equations, Jasmine trains in classical ballet. In a no man's land between languages, her poetry explores multilingualism, sexism, science, and severed roots, both metaphorical and literal. What Makes Tick My Mother is the only poem she has ever written about her mother.
Wow, you're all blindingly gorgeous. Maybe it's just the lights. No, thanks so much for coming out tonight and celebrating this with us. It's an honor to be closing tonight. I never write about my mother, or any mothers for that matter, but as Matt just said, there's an exception to every rule. So this poem is that exception for me. This is for my mother, chronicler of limestone and chronic sufferer of Lyme disease. What makes tick? My mother does not bathe in public. Pools of light flit over basin, floors me. They never reach her skin. Herself she would. If there was a way before my time, she rode bare-shinned up pines, ran wild in the brush past once, and forever be sorry sight now, her legs all covered, miles and miles with forceful strokes my streaming hair, with Venus' hands me a towel, and lemonade with limestone if sprinkled with acid dissolves her Olympic dream and turns to rocks me in her arms, then leaves earth science, says women over 40 are afflicted, most of it I was too young to be grasping at straws, the doctors and she too late for antibiotics to take hold on girl. Don't lay yourself bare. Don't be rash, flamed on kid's skin like a bull's eye, her icked out by now purple marks, her belly to feed and feed back disease. Prevention so easy. Had she known to be quick flick of tweezers before she ever fell sick joke, the 60s hadn't yet named her ill. Spells like acid, lime, rewriting I to why? Let one dot turn her so thin-skinned, so livid, lesions slashed her legs, until covered in shame on the limelight glare that followed in her wake up, I say. If men stone you with their stare, so what? Makes my mother tick bite is all it took for a lifetime of saying no. Body must know.
So that's all, folks. A huge congratulations to all of the 15 winners this year. I'm blown away. What a load of diverse talent there is in this room tonight. I think we need another round of applause for all of you. So thank you to South Bank Centre for generously hosting the event tonight. Thank you to our guest judges, Kieran Yates and Nancy Campbell, for judging this year's competition, and Nancy also for co-hosting tonight with myself and Matt. Thank you also to our other judges and the generous prize givers. Thank you to our main funder, the Arts Council, who, with their funding, enabled us to run our year-round literature programme and also these awards. Well done to all the freelancers, the staff, the trustee team at Creative Future for making today happen so smoothly. But most of all, a big, big special well done and thank you to Matt Friedson, who's the very committed powerhouse behind the awards. Thank you, Matt. Okay. So don't forget to join us tomorrow in the QEH and Purcell rooms or online for the Creative Future Writers' Day from 10:30 onwards. Thank you all for joining us today here at South Bank Centre and also joining us online. Have a safe journey home, and for those of you at home, have a safe journey up to bed. Thank you. Cheers.